Straight
The rise of hustle culture. Now, I've talked about hustle culture many times in the past here because a lot of people tend to get the idea of hustle. They get the idea of hustle screwed up. They look at it the wrong way and have the wrong frame and wrong approach to it. There's nothing wrong with hustling, and I'm a fan of hustling. I have been a participant, for lack of a better term, in hustling. I did episode 1881, a vaccine for hustle porn. That's the people who are thinking that they have to hustle all the time. But I've also talked about secret ways for hustlers to cure the more work syndrome. I talked about hustlers learning how to play the game in episode 1314. The one I just mentioned, secret ways to cure the more work syndrome, is episode 1767. Told you hustle was a choice in episode 794. Episode 736, how to hustle without being thirsty. Episode 621, always have multiple hustles going. Episode 2599, how to turn your side hustle into your main hustle. So I'm not against the concept of hustling. Trust me. I've done more hustling probably than most of the people who are listening to the show. I'm not knocking the concept of hustling, but the idea of hustle culture has a lot of people with some really bad ideas that calcify into bad habits that show up in your work when you believe some of these lies of hustle culture. So everybody knows or has a general idea what hustle culture is, especially if you live in the United States or if you've ever been interested in entrepreneurship, because the United States of America, especially when it comes to business and entrepreneurship, is full of bad ideas about hustle culture, and it is presented to you as if you must take on hustle culture as a package deal, the same way that if you drive a car, you got to have insurance. It's almost like you absolutely have to have this if you're going to do this. And everyone is always pushing. And when I say everyone, I mean people who talk about this stuff. They're often pushing how hard you have to work, how much hustle you have to have. And you always hear these stories getting pushed in your face of how the most successful people, the reason that they're the most successful people is because they have just outworked and showed up earlier than everybody else. They stayed later than everyone else. And the reason this person is successful and this person's a millionaire and this person's had this and this person has that, and you who's listening to this, the peasant who doesn't have it, the reason why you don't have it is simply because this person has worked harder than you for longer than you. They're more of a hustler than you. They grind more than you. They wake up earlier. They stay up later. They're just putting in the extra work when you're not putting in the extra work. And this is all sold to you under the guise of all you had to do is work harder and that will solve everything. This is a way of setting you up for the sale of selling you some form of motivation, go, 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 another kick in the ass to move you to go do what you need to do. Now, let's be clear. Do you need to go do what you need to do? Yes. Do you sometimes need a kick in the ass? Yes. Is motivation a useful thing when you have it? Yes. Is hard work an element of success? Yes. All of these things are true. However, are these the only things you need to be successful? The answer is hell no. That's why we need to talk about this. That's why we need to talk about this concept of hustle culture lying to you, because people are always telling you that, again, to become successful, somebody has just outworked you. And I remember being in a network marketing meeting in like 2002, 2003. And there was this guy there. He was like the guest speaker. He was from another area, maybe Maryland or something, but he was well known as one of the most successful people in the company. And he gave a whole presentation. He was talking about what he does, et cetera, et cetera. And his whole frame was, and this is a common frame you see from people, which is, if I can do it, then you can do it. And he was framing it around the concept of, hey, I'm not that good. I'm not that talented. I'm not that smart. I only did this. I only graduated from school with this degree, or, the kind of things you hear. You hear these all the time from people. They're basically humble bragging. They're telling you all the things that make them not that great. However, look at all the success that I have. And the reason that I have this success and you don't have this success, and he literally said this from the stage, he said, I just work harder than you. He really said that on stage. Now, he said it in a certain way. He didn't say it the way that I'm saying it, but he said, I just work harder than you. And he was saying it as a way of, again, motivating and inspiring the audience. The only reason that I'm up here on the stage and you're down there in the audience is because I just work harder than you work. Was that true, what he was saying? Absolutely not. No, it was not true. I'm not saying the guy doesn't work hard. And I'm also not saying that he wasn't working harder than a lot of people in that room. However, is the reason why he's where he is simply because he works harder than everybody else in the room? The answer is no. Guarantee you there's people in that audience who worked harder than him. They just didn't have the same results that he had. This is not a hard work based business. This is not an effort based business. It's a results based business. He was on the stage because of his results, not because of his effort. Now, his effort led to the results, but that's not the reason he was on the stage. He was pushing it as if I'm here because of my effort. No, you're not. And I believe that he really believed what he was saying. So while I generally agree with the concept of, actually not generally, I especially agree with the concept of hard work to create success. At the same time, even successful people whose messages I generally align with, no one is immune to using this frame. Let's be clear. My brand is called Work on Your Game for a reason. Work on your game. It's about putting in the work. It's about showing up every day and doing the work. I just did a whole episode explaining to you where it came from for me. I'm going to expose this frame here today in today's episode. Again, with the caveat, I want you to listen to this with nuance. Nuance meaning, I'm not saying 100% you should not hustle and work hard. That is not what I'm saying. You should hustle and you should work hard at certain times, in certain ways, for certain reasons. The concept of hustle just because that's what you have to do in order to be a successful person is a false frame. That's what I'm going to address here today. So I'm going to offer here the disclaimer that hard work is an element of success. It's just not the main differentiator between one person who is successful and another person who is either not successful or less successful. It's not just the effort, at least in general, again, assuming both people are actually working. Point number one. Today's topic, once again, is the lies of hustle culture. Number one, here's the first lie that hustle culture tells you. That if you want to have more power in your life, more influence, more of all the things that you think lead to power and influence, you simply have to give up sleep. And when I say give up sleep, I mean that both literally and metaphorically. So in sleep, I do mean literal sleep. Like instead of sleeping 8 hours a night, maybe you can sleep 6 hours a night, and you can sleep when you die, as we say. This is a common one you'll hear all the time. And when I say metaphorically, I mean give up leisure activities, give up having fun, give up spending time with your family, giving up being home for your kids' soccer matches at night. That you have to give up all these things if you want to accumulate power. All right? That if you want one, you have to do the other. Now, please listen to this in full context. Are there people who have given up being at their kids' soccer games and being home at 6 o'clock to have dinner with the family, and they've given up leisure activities and they've given up vacations and they've given up fun and worked 90 hours a week for 20 years and they became wildly successful and a millionaire and they're a person you want to be like? Are there people who fit that description? Yes, there are. What I'm saying is not that these people don't exist. What I'm saying is that just because that's how they did it does not mean for you to achieve the same outcome as them, you must do the same as what they did to get there. That's my argument here today. Everybody heard that, right? Okay. So let's break this down and get specific. Becoming more powerful, having more influence in life does not mean that you must put in a ton more time, nor does it mean that the only way to get there to more power is that you must cut back on sleep, vacations, leisure, rest, or anything other than your nose to the grindstone effort that you hear about on YouTube and you hear some influencer or some quote unquote successful person telling you about on social media. That is not the only route to get to success. And again, this is not a binary. It's not work super hard and never have any time for anything else in your life, or you'll be a failure. There's not just two options. There's a whole lot of gray in between these 2 points that a lot of people don't like talking about because it doesn't sound sexy enough. It's not something you can fit into a 60-second advertisement. That's the reason why I have this show. So let's talk about sleep specifically. First of all, we spend a third of our lives sleeping. All right, everybody knows that just mathematically. Sleep is biologically required for all of us as human beings to rest. Any living thing, or at least let's say animals at least, most of us, we got to sleep. Definitely humans. You have to sleep biologically. If there was a way that a human could live and there's something I could do while I'm awake to where I would never need to sleep, if there was a way to do it, I probably would have done it a long time ago and I would just not sleep. I would just stay up 24 hours a day. I'd get a whole lot of things done, be probably, let's see, if we spend a third of our lives sleeping, let's say I would be at least a third further ahead than where I want to be in life because I wouldn't have to waste time going to sleep. All right? So I would do it if there was a way, but biology requires that human beings rest. There is no way around this. I say all that to say this. The higher your quality of rest when you do rest, and the more consistent that rest when you rest, the better you are when it's time to be awake and actually perform. This is biological truth. Now, let me address a couple of exceptional stories that some of you may have heard. You may have heard of some exceptional person, whether that's one of your favorite athletes, whether it's some entrepreneur or some revered character from history, who tells you, or the story is told, the legend about them is that they only need to sleep 4 hours a night, or they only need to sleep 6 hours, or they get by on X number of hours, which is less than the normal human range, which is 7 to 9 hours for most people. And they are an exceptional performer, exceptionally skilled, and they have all these high level accomplishments. So maybe I can get by only sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night like that person did. And I say to that, bullshit, false, no, you can't. And even if you do, because a human being can function on 4 or 5 hours of sleep, even for an extended period of time, let's say months or weeks. The issue is you're not at your best when you're only sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night. Human beings, 99% of us are not at our best when we're sleeping 5 hours a night. Doesn't mean you can't have a good day on Tuesday, sleeping 5 hours a night, but can you do that consistently and be at your best? The answer is no. Your best doesn't mean better than everybody around you. Your best. You need to get a full night of sleep. How do you know when you're getting a full night of sleep? Easy. Go to sleep, don't set an alarm, and see how long you're sleeping. That's how you know how many hours of sleep you actually need. Now, how many of you, if you go to sleep, don't set an alarm, and you just sleep, you're going to wake up in 5 hours completely refreshed, ready to go, and you can do that consistently day after day, month after month, year after year? Answer for 99 out of 100 of you listening to this is no, you cannot do that. So that takes care of the exceptional stories that you've heard, and many of them are just that, stories. Are they true? Probably not. The catch-22 here is that the more and better rest you actually get, the better a performer you'll be. The more and higher quality rest you get, the better you are when you're awake. This is the reason why this is a catch-22, is because many high-performing people, including myself, have a hard time wrapping our minds around that, because why would I go to sleep when I could just stay up and get more work done? Well, the answer to it is, if you go to sleep, the next time you wake up, instead of needing 10 hours to get certain things done, you can get those same things done in 7 hours, because you will be more effective during the 7 hours. You won't need 10 hours because your effectiveness during the awake 7 hours will be better because you got better rest. That's the catch-22 that a lot of high performers can't quite wrap their minds around. And why is this? It's because Western society has taught us that resting, sleeping, doing anything other than working and grinding is for who? Is for the poor people, the broke people, the unsuccessful people, the average people. And you can rest when you die, and you should be up working, because if you're not working, then your opponent is up working. And when you and your opponent meet, your opponent's going to beat you because they've been putting in work while you've been sleeping. How many of you have heard some form of that sometime in your life? Many of you have heard it hundreds of times, depending on what type of material you take in and what type of world you operate in. I've heard that thousands of times from a whole lot of different people. And not for nothing, I will probably say at some point in my life, all the content I put out, I probably said something like that at some point, somewhere along the line. I'm sure I have. Good thing about me is that I tell you, keep your opinions flexible. I told you that in episode 734. Every opinion you have now should be open and subject to change, given new information, new insights, and new experiences. That's one of mine that has changed. All of you have heard this, especially those of you who are athletes, and many of you believe it. That you got to be putting in the work, because if you're not, you're losing, you're falling behind. The real truth, again, those who prioritize the off time tend to perform better during the on time. Here's something that you may not know. You may have heard, actually, let me tell you something that you may have heard. You may have heard that Kobe Bryant was good at sleeping 4 or 5 hours every night, and Kobe Bryant was a pretty good performer. Now, did Kobe Bryant actually sleep 4 or 5 hours a night? I don't know. Do we have any verification that this actually happened, like actual proof that Kobe Bryant slept 4 or 5 hours every night? No, we have no proof. All we have is maybe what Kobe said, or maybe what Kobe told somebody else to say, and then they told it and it became a legend. And since so many people love Kobe Bryant, anything positive they hear about Kobe, they'll just run with it without validating if it's true. Maybe it's true. Let's say Kobe was one of the exceptional people who could sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. Well, let's juxtapose that with somebody like LeBron James, who is known for getting 12 hours of sleep a day. At least I've heard him say that. I don't know if he still does it. 12 hours of sleep a day, so he can go out there and perform. And there are many other high-performing people out there who are known for getting a whole lot of sleep. Let me see if I can ask. I'm going to ask ChatGPT right now. Give me a list of high-performing and well-known successful people who are noted for getting even more than the average amount of sleep every night, so that their performance can be at a higher level. So let's see what we have here, because I know LeBron is one. I've heard him talk about it. And let's see who are some others. I remember reading a book by Ariana Huffington. She's the one who created the Huffington Post. She wrote a whole book on sleep. And there are many people who've written books on sleep. She wrote a book about sleep and why it's so valuable, and how certain parts of the brain and body get repaired during certain stages of sleep that you cannot get to if you don't get a certain amount of sleep. You can't get to those stages of sleep where your body gets repaired and your brain gets repaired if you're only sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, because your brain doesn't get to those deep waves yet. So this story about Kobe or Michael Jordan sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night sounds great, but I don't believe it. I don't believe it. So LeBron James, as I said, including his naps, gets 12 hours of sleep a day. Roger Federer, a very well-known tennis player, was known for getting 10 to 12 hours of sleep per night. It helps his mental focus, also physical recovery. That's science. That's not just him. That's science. Usain Bolt, y'all remember him, the sprinter from Jamaica who broke all the records? He was known for sleeping 8 to 10 hours a night, including taking naps before his big races. Jeff Bezos is known to sleep 8 hours per night. All right, you want to talk about somebody building something that matters and grinding? I think Jeff Bezos did a good amount of grinding. Would everybody agree? 8 hours per night of sleep. He says he makes better decisions when he gets full rest. He says, quote, 8 hours of sleep makes a big difference for me, and I try hard to make that our priority. Ariana Huffington talked about this. She built an entire brand. Her brand, Thrive Global, was based around the importance of sleep. There's a guy named Dr. Matthew Walker. He wrote a book called Why We Sleep. I don't believe I've read that. He preaches 8 hours a night. Venus Williams, tennis player, 9 to 10 hours a night, especially during her training cycles when she was playing. Venus is pretty much retired now. Steve Nash, another famous basketball player, won 2 NBA MVP awards in the mid-2000s. One of those awards should have went to Kobe Bryant, but that's neither here nor there. Steve Nash used to track his sleep during his playing career. This is before we had him on devices on our arms and our phones. Steve Nash advocated 9 to 10 hours a night of sleep for peak physical recovery. So I'm just giving you some examples to counterbalance any of the stuff that you've heard from your favorite motivational speaker on the internet telling you that you shouldn't be sleeping, you should just be working. Okay, it sounds good. I like the concept. I want you to take that concept metaphorically, don't take it literally. And also you must make adjustments based on who you are. And I'm not telling you not to hustle at all. Okay, I'm not telling you that at all. Okay, it means that your hustle will have its full complement of resources and energy instead of just running on fumes if you get proper sleep. So this is one of the lies of hustle culture, that you should just not sleep at all so you can just spend more time hustling. That's backwards hustling. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is the lies of hustle culture. Number 2, more effort is required for more results. Okay, this is another lie. This is a big lie of hustle culture. This is the biggest lie, probably. This is an inaccurate formula that Western society has ingrained into the brains of the majority of people, myself included. Okay, I've been a victim of this idea right here, is that if I want more results, I just have to work harder. Again, my brand is called Work on Your Game for a reason. Like, putting in the time and putting in the work does matter. I'm never one who's going to tell you that it doesn't matter to put the time and put in the work. It absolutely does matter, but it also matters what the quality of the time that you're putting in and the quality of work that you're doing. If you're doing low quality work and you're putting a whole bunch of time into doing it, you're actually hustling backwards. So you could get more done in 3 hours of high quality work than you can get done in 12 hours of bullshit work because you're tired and you're fatigued and you didn't get enough rest the previous night. And more effort is not required for more results. More leverage is required for more results. You want to get a higher level of results, you need more leverage, meaning the work that you do needs to create a higher level of return. It's not just do more work until you get the return that you want. That may work when you're first starting out, but when it's time to get real scale and real results in a real way that allows you at some point to move away from just hustling and having hustling as your identity, you got to figure out how to get leverage, not just how to give more effort. That's what the game is about. So when it comes to the nose to the grindstone effort, is this required in some way, shape, or form at some point if you're going to do something that matters? The answer is absolutely it does. If you're going to do something that matters, at some point, there are going to be time periods when you need to just be all focused on the work and just do the work, do the work, do the work, and not do anything else. Is that a thing? Absolutely it is. At the same time, putting more effort into something and having less time for other things that you may enjoy outside of work, that does not necessarily translate into more success or more winning. It does translate into more effort. It translates into more time, translates into more blood, sweat, and tears, theoretically, metaphorically, but does it translate into more success just because you put in more time and you worked harder? No, it does not. And when you get to a certain level of achievement, you start to realize that there's only so much you can keep pressing the gas on effort and time before you need to find a different formula for creating success. And again, I speak on this from personal experience. There's a certain point where efforts start to produce diminishing returns. This is a scientific law. All right, scientific law of diminishing returns says at some point you hit a sweet spot of effort and returns on that effort. And if you keep going with more and more effort after you've hit the sweet spot, then you can keep giving the effort, but the returns of that effort are going to get smaller and smaller to the point that you realize, okay, there's only so much hard work that I can do before I got to find a better way to produce more results. Not just by tripling down on hard work. There's only so much hard work you can do. It's 100% is your maximum capacity. There's no such thing as 110%. There's 100%. That's the most, that's the hardest you can go is 100%. So you can't double down if you're already at 80%. Now, double 80% is 160%. That doesn't exist. Do you understand? So if you're giving 100% effort, but still not getting the results you want, then the resolution is not give more effort. You don't have any more effort to give. You're at 100%. How much more can you give? You don't have any more. You got to figure out, how do I make this effort produce a better result? That is known as leverage. How do I make the same effort produce a higher level of result? Does everybody understand what I'm saying here? Now, there's a sweet spot, as I already explained. You go past the sweet spot, then your returns get smaller. And we've been taught that the most successful people are simply the hardest working people. All right, if you're over the age of 18, there's no reason why you should still be believing this bullshit. That's not true. The most successful people have figured out how to make their hard work produce more results than people who have less success than them. That's what successful people have done. They're not just outworking the world. That's not true. Jeff Bezos runs Amazon. I just mentioned his name. All right, there's somebody working in a Amazon warehouse right now today, as you listen to this, who is working harder than Jeff Bezos is working right now today. I promise you that. But Jeff Bezos is making more money off that, or off all the work of the warehouse workers, than that warehouse is making off his or her individual work. Now, why is that? Because Jeff Bezos has leverage. What is his leverage? His leverage is he created a system to where he's making money off the efforts of 100,000 people, as opposed to only making money off the efforts of one person, being himself. That's known as leverage. You have leverage when you have systems. And when you have systems in place, you can generate returns that do not require your personal effort or your personal time. That's why Jeff Bezos can make a whole bunch of money without doing any work. And a lot of people only make money when they're working, because many of us have been taught wrong. So it is not to say that successful people don't work hard. Okay? It is to say that just because you're working hard does not mean you will be the most successful. And working harder than somebody else does not mean you'll be more successful than them. How many of you ever seen somebody who seems to not be working as hard as you, but they are achieving more results than you? And you ever seen that? Of course, we all seen it. And also doesn't mean that the most successful person in the room is indeed the hardest working person in the room. That is often not the case. But you'll be damned to hear a highly successful person tell you how hard, not tell you how hard they work, because they believe the bullshit too. And it's the easiest thing to say to people in the audience. Well, hey, I just put in the work. I do a lot of interviews. And a lot of times when I'm doing interviews, I'll make some point about effort that I've given. I've told you all many of the stories, how I put 14, 15,000 videos on the internet, how I cold called 60 basketball agents to get my one opportunity, how I did a whole bunch of free speaking gigs to start getting to paid speaking gigs, how I put out 3,000 episodes of the very show that you're listening to right now. I told you many times about, or I'll talk to people many times about the effort and the grind, the things that I did that led me to being who I am. And very often, the host who I'm talking to will add in their own 2 cents behind my point, and they'll say something like, hey, audience, they're talking to the audience. See, when I talk to you all about putting in the work, when I talk to you all about putting in the time, this is what I mean. And they will be holding me up as an example to the audience of this is what it means to put in the work and put in the time. And while they're not wrong, they're also not telling the whole story. See, it's more to the story than just this simple point. And a lot of people buy into this. Well, the successful people just work really hard, and that's the reason why they're successful. Again, there's much more to the story than that. As I like to say, salt, pepper, and oregano are a great addition to a sandwich. But if you take away the sandwich and all you have is salt, pepper, and oregano, you do not have a meal. All right, hard work is the salt, pepper, and oregano. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is the lies of hustle culture. Number 3, you win by working harder than everyone else. This is a lie. All right, have I beat up this point already enough? This one should be easy to figure out given what you've already heard in the first 2 points. Okay, hard work is a requirement for success. This is true. You plan on being successful, you must work hard. You cannot become successful without effort and energy behind that effort. Effort, is one of the 5 forms of investment. You have time, money, attention, energy, and focus. However, the maintenance man at a Fortune 500 company probably works harder than the CEO. Again, the guy cleaning the toilets at some Amazon warehouse is working harder than Jeff Bezos is working. Jeff Bezos might not be working today. Yeah, Jeff Bezos probably makes 100 times more money than that guy. Why is this? Because it ain't about just hard work. Hard work matters 2 times. Let me tell you the 2 places where hard work matters. Number 1, when you're brand new, you've achieved nothing, you know nothing, and you need to learn and get your hands dirty. All right, you learn a lot through action. You learn more through action than you learn by consuming. I told you all about the levels of expertise. All right, a college graduate doesn't know anything. They think they know a lot. They know absolutely nothing. The reason you know nothing is because you don't know something until you've done it. You don't know something by studying it, reading about it, or taking a class on it. You know something by literally doing it in your real life with your real hands, your bare hands. That's how you know things. So if you know nothing and you want to learn, then go do stuff. Work really hard, and the more stuff you do, the more stuff you learn. You learn by activity. All right, that's one time when you need to work hard. Here's the second time you work hard. When you are amongst others who are equal to you in status, talent, resources, experience, and knowledge. They got all the same stuff you got. Here, putting in additional work will create an additional edge for you, an edge that separates you from the other people in the group with a caveat. Here's the caveat. You need to know exactly where that hard work must be applied. So don't just say, I'm working hard and everybody else in the group not getting the outcome, but you're working hard on the wrong thing. You got to know where to work hard. Being that you have experience and that you have knowledge, you should have a good idea where the hard work is supposed to go. At least directionally, you should know where to go. And if you don't know, go get some help from a professional who can tell you which way and which button to push. This is all your job as a pro. Let's recap today's class, which is the rise of hustle culture. So everybody knows this concept of hustle culture. Everyone telling you that you're supposed to be hustling and grinding, and if you're not, you're guilty and you feel bad about yourself because you're not working hard and quote unquote being productive when you could be doing that. Number 1, more power equals less sleep. This is bullshit. This is a common one that you'll hear all the time, directionally or literally, depending on the frame. And this is not the case. You actually perform better when you're well rested than you perform if you just keep going and you pass up on rest. Number 2, more effort is required for more results. This is not true at all. If you want more results, you need more leverage. Leverage simply means, how do I get more returns from the same effort? That's a good question to ask yourself. This is the reason why Jeff Bezos gets paid on the efforts of 100,000 people, whereas one of those 100,000 people gets paid on the efforts of one person. That's the difference between having leverage and not having leverage. That's how you get more results, not by working harder. Number 3, you win by working harder than everybody else. All right, this is another nonsense frame that in youth sports you hear this all the time. Oh, this guy is really successful and he's better than all y'all because he just works harder than you. That's bullshit. No, that's not the reason. The person just may have more talent. The person may be working harder on different things. The person has different resources. There are many different reasons why someone has more success than the next person. It's not just because of effort. That doesn't mean that you don't have a chance to surpass them in outcome. You just got to ask yourself better quality questions rather than just asking the simple question of, how can I just work as hard as that person or work harder than that person? That ain't the reason. That's how they get a lot of people fooled and tricked out here thinking that they're solving a problem when they're actually exacerbating it. Inside of Work on Your Game University, I coach you on how to do the real things that create real leverage and real outcomes in your real life and in your real business with real questions, real insights. We get to work on the real strategies and systems that make these things work so you can get real results. That's all at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all